What would you do if every person you crossed, every lie you told, and every crime you committed suddenly started catching up with you? For Lucky, there is nowhere left to hide. After the shocking death of Cary, Lucky is once again running for her life. But this time she isn't just running from the FBI, the people hunting her, or the dangerous secrets surrounding the missing money. She's also running from something much harder to escape, her own conscience. Episode 5, titled, Are We Bad People?, takes Lucky on a completely different kind of journey. The danger is still there, the chase is still alive, but now Lucky is beginning to question the person she has become. And by the end of this episode, one thing becomes clear. Lucky may have finally found a way to turn the tables. Welcome back to Shed Movies, where we break down the biggest moments, twists, and hidden details from your favorite shows. Today we're diving into Lucky Season 1 Episode 5, an episode filled with guilt, deception, family secrets, and one shocking plan that could completely change the final chapters of this story. So let's get into it. Lucky is on the run again. The episode picks up after the devastating events of the previous chapter. Cary is dead. Lucky has lost one of the few people who truly understood the complicated history between them, and instead of having time to process what happened, she has to immediately disappear. She is injured, exhausted, covered in blood, and carrying a teddy bear that will eventually become much more important than it first appears. As Lucky makes her way through the streets, she comes across the wreckage from the accident she and Cary caused. There are damaged vehicles, emergency workers, police officers, and injured people everywhere. For Lucky, this should be the perfect opportunity to disappear. But instead, she does something that reveals just how desperate she has become. When the paramedics prepare to transport an elderly woman to the hospital, Lucky claims that the injured woman is her grandmother. It's another lie. And somehow it works. Lucky manages to convince the paramedic that she needs to accompany the woman to the hospital, allowing her to get past the police without immediately being arrested. But Lucky doesn't realize that the hospital is about to become another nightmare. The hospital changes everything. Once Lucky arrives at the hospital, she has to continue pretending that the injured woman is her grandmother. A nurse begins asking questions, forcing Lucky to maintain the story. But then she sees something that completely throws her off. Rand is there. The woman who has been relentlessly pursuing her is suddenly right in front of her. Lucky's body begins reacting before her mind can even process what is happening. She's weak. She's dizzy. Her memories begin flooding back. And eventually she collapses. It's almost as if everything Lucky has been running from has finally caught up with her. But the hospital doesn't just remind Lucky about Cary or the accident. It forces her to confront the consequences of her actions. She encounters Rand's daughter, Dana, and for perhaps one of the first times in the series, Lucky genuinely comforts another person without trying to manipulate or use them. That moment is important because it shows us something has changed. Lucky is beginning to understand that the people around her aren't simply obstacles standing between her and survival. They are people. They have families. They have feelings. And sometimes, her decisions destroy lives that have nothing to do with her original goal. Are Lucky and her family really bad people? This is where the episode's title becomes extremely important. Are we bad people? It's not simply a question thrown into the story for dramatic effect. It's the question Lucky has been carrying for years. Growing up, Lucky learned a very unusual philosophy from her father. To him, good and evil weren't necessarily absolute opposites. Instead, they existed on a spectrum. And that philosophy gave Lucky something extremely convenient. A way to justify almost anything she had to do. If survival required lying, she lied. If someone needed to be manipulated, she manipulated them. If violence became necessary, she could convince herself there was a reason for it. But now the excuses aren't working anymore. Cary is dead. People have been injured. Families have been destroyed. And Lucky is beginning to wonder whether survival is really enough to justify everything she's done. That's what makes this episode so interesting. The biggest battle isn't happening between Lucky and the FBI. It's happening inside Lucky's head. Lucky finally breaks down. Eventually, Lucky escapes the hospital and makes her way to a cheap hotel. She is barely holding herself together. At the hotel bar, she begins talking to a stranger. Normally, someone like this would simply be another person Lucky could manipulate for her own benefit. But this time, she doesn't seem interested in taking advantage of him. Instead, she needs someone to listen. Lucky essentially confesses that she's afraid she might be a terrible person. The man's response is surprisingly simple. If you're worried about whether you're a bad person, maybe that concern itself means there's still something good inside you. But Lucky knows the situation isn't that easy. She can't simply ignore everything she's done. She can't pretend the consequences don't exist. And this is where the episode gives Lucky something she hasn't really had before. Self-awareness. She is finally looking at herself without the usual excuses. Rand isn't giving up. While Lucky is hiding, Rand is recovering in the hospital. She has suffered a serious head injury, but even that isn't enough to make her forget about the case. In fact, she's frustrated. The investigation has lost its momentum. Cary is dead. Lucky has disappeared. And the trail seems to be going cold. But Rand isn't ready to walk away. Even while she's recovering, she's still trying to figure out where Lucky went and how she can bring her in. That determination becomes even more important when Dana remembers Lucky from their encounter at the hospital. Suddenly Rand has something. A face. An identity. A connection. And Lucky's window of freedom is becoming smaller. Cary's funeral changes everything. Meanwhile, Priscilla is dealing with Cary's death in her own way. She's devastated. She makes arrangements for his cremation and memorial service, but her grief quickly turns into anger. She wants Wayne to know what happened. And that decision becomes significant because Wayne is connected to Cary in a much deeper way than Lucky initially realizes. At the memorial, the atmosphere is painfully uncomfortable. Priscilla is surrounded by people, but emotionally, she is completely alone. Eventually, she takes Cary's urn and walks away from the gathering. She heads toward the beach to scatter his ashes. And then comes another major confrontation. Lucky appears. But Priscilla isn't exactly happy to see her. Lucky explains that the missing money is gone because Cary was the only person who knew where it was. Cary is dead. Lucky doesn't have the information. And without that money, Priscilla is still in danger. The conversation quickly becomes more than just business. It becomes personal. Old wounds involving John and the past begin resurfacing, proving that the conflict between these characters goes much deeper than money. The teddy bear holds a secret. And then Lucky discovers something that could completely change her situation. Cary's teddy bear. At first, it seems like nothing more than another emotional reminder of the man she's lost. But when Lucky angrily handles the bear, something unexpected happens. A recording plays. And suddenly, Cary's secret becomes accessible. He had hidden the information Lucky needs inside the teddy bear. The same object that has been traveling with Lucky throughout her escape may actually contain the key to the missing money. For a moment, Lucky seems to have caught a break. Maybe her name really is appropriate. Maybe she's finally lucky. But the problem is that she doesn't have much time to celebrate. Because while Lucky has discovered Cary's secret, her enemies are getting closer. Wayne's connection changes the game. The episode also reveals another important piece of the puzzle. Wayne was Cary's father. And unlike everyone else, Wayne isn't suddenly becoming sympathetic because Cary is dead. He still wants the money. And he's still willing to pursue Lucky. That means Lucky is now trapped between multiple forces. The FBI wants her. Wayne wants the money. Priscilla wants answers. And Lucky is trying to figure out whether she can survive long enough to protect herself and her father. The moral awakening she's experiencing doesn't make the danger disappear. If anything, it makes things more complicated. Lucky may finally want to do the right thing, but the world around her doesn't care. John is suddenly free. Then comes one of the episode's biggest surprises. Lucky's father, John, is unexpectedly released from prison. And this isn't supposed to happen. He still has years remaining before he would normally become eligible for parole. So who arranged his release? The answer becomes increasingly obvious. Lucky. Remember, Dana mentioned that Lucky had said she would do anything for her father. And Rand had previously reached out through the Department of Justice. The pieces begin connecting. Lucky has apparently found a way to force the situation into her favor. John is suspicious about his sudden freedom, and honestly he should be. Because in Lucky's world, nothing comes free. If someone opens a prison door for you, there's usually a reason. Lucky's final move. Lucky knows Rand believes she has the advantage. The FBI thinks Lucky is running out of options. But Lucky may have been planning something completely different. Her idea involves both herself and John surrendering to the authorities. At first, this sounds insane. Why would Lucky voluntarily walk into the hands of the people hunting her? But that's exactly why it could work. Rand believes capturing Lucky means winning. Lucky knows better. Sometimes surrendering isn't losing. Sometimes it's the first move in a much bigger plan. And judging by the way this episode ends, Lucky isn't walking into the authorities blindly. She's walking in because she believes she has something they desperately want. And that could give her leverage. What could happen next? I don't believe Lucky is simply giving herself up. She's too strategic for that. Her decision to surrender alongside John could be designed to force Rand into a situation where she has to negotiate. Lucky may have discovered something that gives her leverage over the investigation. With Cary gone and the hidden recording discovered, the missing money could finally become accessible. But once that happens, everyone is going to want it. Wayne, Lucky, the authorities, and possibly others connected to Cary could all become involved. John's mysterious release feels like part of a larger arrangement. Someone helped get him out, and that favor is likely going to come with consequences. Lucky may have secured his freedom temporarily, but keeping him free could become much harder. Prediction number 4. Lucky's moral transformation will be tested. Episode 5 leaves Lucky standing at one of the biggest crossroads of her life. She's lost Cary. She's being hunted. The FBI is closing in. Wayne still wants the money. But somehow, Lucky has managed to turn a hopeless situation into another opportunity. And now she's betting everything on one final move. The question is Lucky really surrendering? Or is she setting the biggest trap of her life? Let us know your theory in the comments. Do you think Lucky has finally outsmarted Rand, or is this plan going to backfire? If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Shed Movies, and turn on notifications for more movie and series recaps. Until next time, stay safe, stay sharp. And remember, when Lucky walks into a trap, there might be someone waiting on the other side. This is Shed Movies.